The conference room went completely silent when the CEO looked across the polished glass table and told the Asian single father that people like him belonged in the kitchen, not in a room where million-dollar decisions were being made. She said it with a cold smile, certain that everyone would laugh along with her. But nobody laughed. Because less than an hour later, the most important client her company had ever fought to win would walk through those same doors, look past the powerful CEO, point directly at the exhausted single dad, and say 5 words that would change both of their lives forever: "Get me him, not you." Before we begin, if you believe kindness can give someone a second chance and that a person's worth should never be judged by their clothes, background, or circumstances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps us bring more stories about ordinary people who quietly carry extraordinary burdens. His name was Kenji Arata, a 38-year-old father who had learned to measure his life in small victories. Getting his daughter to school on time was a victory. Paying the electricity bill before the final notice was a victory. Finding enough work to keep food in the refrigerator while still being home when his 8-year-old daughter, Mina, lost a tooth or woke from a nightmare was a victory. Kenji had once been a highly respected systems architect, but after his wife died unexpectedly several years earlier, everything changed. He turned down promotions that required constant travel, sold most of what he owned, and accepted contract work so he could raise Mina himself. He never complained about the sacrifices. He simply woke before sunrise, packed Mina's lunch, prepared breakfast, checked her school bag, and then spent his days solving problems for companies that often forgot his name as soon as the invoice was paid. That morning, Kenji arrived at the headquarters of Vera Technologies wearing his only charcoal suit. The sleeves were slightly worn, and one button had been replaced with a darker one after Mina accidentally pulled the original loose while hugging him. In his hand was a slim folder containing a proposal he had spent 3 months developing. Vera was preparing to bid for a contract that could transform its future, and Kenji had been hired as an independent technical consultant because his expertise in logistics systems was exactly what the company needed. He knew the proposal inside and out. He knew where the system could fail, how much the company could save, and how to make the technology work for thousands of customers instead of merely looking impressive in a presentation. But when he entered the executive conference room, the atmosphere immediately changed. At the head of the table sat Celine Voss, Vera's 42-year-old CEO, dressed in an immaculate navy suit, surrounded by senior executives. She looked at Kenji's inexpensive watch, his worn briefcase, and finally his face. Instead of greeting him, she asked whether the person who had prepared the proposal was actually attending the meeting. When Kenji calmly explained that he was the consultant responsible for it, Celine's expression hardened. She questioned why a major corporate presentation had been entrusted to someone who looked like he had come from a delivery service. The room became uncomfortable, but Kenji kept his composure. He had heard prejudice before. He had survived worse than embarrassment. Celine continued, telling him that business at their level required presence, confidence, and the right image. She suggested that perhaps he could take notes while one of the executives presented his work. Kenji quietly opened his folder and said that the proposal contained several technical risks the executives had not yet reviewed. That was when Celine lost patience. She told him that being technically competent did not mean he belonged at the table. Then, with several executives watching, she made the humiliating remark about him belonging in a kitchen rather than a boardroom. Kenji felt every word land heavily, but he refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him break. He closed his folder, thanked everyone for their time, and stood to leave. What nobody knew was that Kenji had received a message from Mina just minutes before the meeting. She had sent him a photograph of a small drawing she had made at school. It showed a little house with 2 people standing beneath a blue sky. Above them she had written, in uneven handwriting, that her father was her hero. Kenji looked at that picture one last time on his phone before putting it away. He could not afford to let one cruel person convince him that the life he had built for his daughter was something to be ashamed of. He had almost reached the elevator when the receptionist suddenly announced that the company's most important client had arrived. Every executive in the building seemed to freeze. Adrian Vale, founder of North Star Global, was not merely another client. He was the man whose company controlled a massive international distribution network, and North Star's contract was worth more than anything Vera had ever won. Celine immediately straightened her jacket and hurried toward the lobby, expecting to lead the meeting herself. Kenji stepped aside, hoping to disappear unnoticed. But as Adrian entered, he stopped. His eyes moved across the lobby and landed on Kenji. For several seconds he stared as though he were trying to make sure he had recognized the right person. Then his entire expression changed. He walked straight past Celine, past the executives waiting to impress him, and approached Kenji. Adrian had met Kenji 8 months earlier at a small industry conference. At the time, Kenji had been standing near a demonstration booth nobody cared about. Adrian had asked a complicated question about supply chain forecasting, and Kenji had given him an answer so precise that Adrian spent the next several weeks asking his own team to investigate the consultant's ideas. Kenji had never known how seriously Adrian had taken that conversation. He certainly never expected to see him again. Adrian asked where Kenji was going. Kenji explained that his presentation was apparently no longer required. Adrian looked toward Celine and asked what had happened. Celine tried to regain control, insisting that there had been a misunderstanding and that Kenji was only an outside consultant. Adrian's face became unusually serious. He told her that Kenji was the reason he had agreed to consider Vera's proposal in the first place. Then he looked directly at Celine and delivered the sentence nobody in the lobby would ever forget, "Get me him, not you." The executive stood speechless. Adrian explained that he had reviewed Kenji's technical work independently and had discovered that the proposal contained a solution worth millions of dollars. More importantly, he said, Kenji was one of the few people he had encountered who understood both the technology and the human cost of getting it wrong. Adrian did not want another polished executive making promises. He wanted the person who had actually built the solution. Celine tried to defend herself, but the damage was already done. Adrian refused to enter the conference room unless Kenji led the presentation. Kenji hesitated. He could have walked away. A part of him wanted to. But then he remembered Mina's drawing, and he realized something important. Walking away would not erase what had happened. Standing up calmly and proving his ability might. So Kenji returned to the conference room. For the next 40 minutes, the man who had been treated like an outsider became the person everyone listened to. He explained the system with clarity, showing where Vera could reduce delays, prevent costly mistakes, and protect smaller suppliers from being crushed by automated decisions. He did not exaggerate. He did not attack Celine. He simply presented the truth. Adrian asked difficult questions, and Kenji answered every one. When an executive challenged one of his projections, Kenji admitted where the estimate could vary and explained how he would test it. That honesty impressed Adrian more than any sales pitch could have. By the end of the presentation, Adrian made his decision. North Star would sign the contract, but only if Kenji remained directly involved in implementation. Then he surprised everyone again by offering Kenji a permanent leadership position within North Star's technology division, with flexible hours so he could continue being present for Mina. Kenji nearly refused. He had spent years convincing himself that survival was enough. But Adrian told him that sometimes a second chance was not about starting over. Sometimes it was about finally being seen for who you had been all along. Celine remained silent. Later that afternoon, she found Kenji alone near the building's quiet courtyard. She apologized without excuses. She admitted that she had judged him before hearing a single idea. Kenji accepted the apology, but he did not pretend the humiliation had never happened. He simply told her that everyone deserves the opportunity to become better than the worst thing they have done. Months later, Kenji's life looked completely different. He still woke early. He still packed Mina's lunch. He still checked her homework before beginning work. But now his laptop sat on the kitchen table beside her coloring books, and the meetings he once had to take from noisy cafes were happening from an office where his daughter could visit after school. Mina eventually drew another picture. This time, she drew her father standing beside a tall building, holding her hand. Above them she wrote that her dad had never stopped believing in himself. Kenji kept both drawings. And Celine changed too. She began rebuilding her company culture around one simple principle: never confuse privilege with talent. The incident became an uncomfortable lesson that ultimately changed how Vera hired, promoted, and listened to people. The world often notices the person wearing the most expensive suit. It notices the loudest voice, the biggest office, the most impressive title. But sometimes the person carrying the heaviest burden is the quiet one standing near the door, wondering whether there is still a place for him at the table. Kenji had walked into that building expecting nothing more than a chance to prove his work. He walked out with something far more valuable: respect, opportunity, and the knowledge that his daughter would grow up seeing her father choose dignity even when others tried to take it away. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who may be struggling silently, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Every engagement helps these stories reach another person who might need to hear that their circumstances do not define their worth. And here is the special request before we end: comment, kindness gives second chances, if you believe that one act of respect can change someone's entire life. Because sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the person the world has been waiting for.